Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome. In 1911, Winston Churchill made one of the most consequential energy decisions in modern history. As First Lord of the Admiralty, he converted the Royal Navy from Welsh coal to Persian oil. It made the ships faster and gave Britain a strategic edge, but it also made the entire British military dependent on a fuel source thousands of miles from home. That dependency shaped a century of geopolitics, from the founding of the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, which we now know today as BP, through to the Iraq wars, and indeed the wars we've seen recently. And today we're at another inflection point, and almost nobody in the mainstream energy debate is talking about it properly. The relationship between energy and military power is being fundamentally restructured. The Ukraine conflict has demonstrated what happens when energy supply lines are weaponized. Europe's dependence on Russian gas created a strategic vulnerability that took years to partially resolve. But Ukraine has also shown something else, something that military strategists are paying very close attention to. The battlefield itself is electrifying. Small drones costing a few hundred to a few $1,000s are destroying tanks, artillery positions, and supply lines that cost millions. These are electrically powered platforms. They're charged from portable batteries. They're operated through electronic warfare systems. The old calculus of military power, heavy armor, large formations, fuel-intensive logistics, is being disrupted by cheap electrical distributed systems. Sounds familiar? In the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts, approximately 18% of US military casualties were incurred in fuel and water supply operations. Think about that. Nearly 1 in 5 casualties were related to keeping the fuel moving. An electrified military with distributed generation, battery storage, reduced logistics tails is not cheaper, it's more survivable. What is emerging is something I call the energy defense nexus, the convergence of military capability with electrical infrastructure, and it runs much deeper than drones. The US Defense Innovation Unit is contracting with commercial battery firms like Saft and Fluence. The US Army Next Generation Combat Vehicle program is integrating commercial heavy-duty electric traction systems. Shipbuilders are integrating battery propulsion into warship designs. And they're drawing directly upon civilian maritime electrification technology. The European Defence Industry Development Programme funds cybersecurity for energy systems. Already in the Ukraine, we're seeing actually that the renewable energy infrastructure is harder for the Russians to destroy than taking out some centralized fossil fuel plants. This is not a coincidence. The technologies that make civilian electrification work, batteries, power electronics, electric motors, grid management software, they're the same technologies that modern militaries need. Manufacturing capabilities in these technologies become a strategic capability. And this is where geopolitics becomes uncomfortable for anyone paying attention. China controls 90% of the global rare earth processing capacity, and it's recently placed export controls on several rare earth elements, including terbium and dysprosium and samarium. And they're the same elements that needed to go into the guidance systems of the premium US-35 fighter jet. The US currently lacks any commercial scale heavy rare earth separation facility, and it's unlikely to build a competitive mine to magnet supply chain within 5 years. Without significant investment, the F-35 production could face future supply constraints. So let me be direct about what this means. A nation's capacity to manufacture batteries, power electronics, electric motors, and grid management systems is no longer a purely commercial concern. It's a defense concern. It's a sovereignty concern. In 2022, Ukraine produced around about a couple of thousand drones. In 2025, it produced over 3 million drones. So countries that build deep domestic capability in electrotechnical manufacturing, from raw material processing through to finished systems, are going to gain compounding advantages both across civilian and military domains. And those that just remain dependent on imported components face a new kind of vulnerability, not the old oil dependency, but a technology dependency that may prove even harder to escape. So Churchill's decision back in 1911 traded one dependency for another, coal for oil. And the E-flip offers another, something different, the possibility of energy systems built primarily on domestic resources, so converting your sunlight, your wind, and your manufactured components rather than importing fuels. But only if nations invest in the full stack of capability, not just generation, but manufacturing, integration, and the institutional capacity to operate complex electrical systems at scale. So the energy and defense nexus is not a future concern. It's an active one here today. And countries are going to need to do this. They want to be military independent. So it's going to happen. Thank you very much. This is Electrostate. Many thanks. Bye-bye.